Hi guys. I know I don't look great right now, but I wanted to have a visual before the exam so that I could say good luck. And I have some resources for you. And I'm just going to go over some stuff in Unit 4 really quick at the request of Rex. It's going to be soil, plate tectonics, and let me see what else. Soil, plate tectonics, and some of the cycle stuff. So just give me a second. I'm just going to show you what I have up here. So one of the teachers on Facebook posted a really great breakdown of the exam reference sheet. I highly suggest having this like right next to you. So I took a lot of online college courses, and one I took was particularly hard. It was physical chemistry, and the exams were online. They were timed, and you had to input your all of your stuff into the boxes and then click submit. So what I would do prior to the exam is I would have everything I needed: homeworks, unit things, practice questions. Everything was out, and I knew where everything was. And then the second you got that question, it was so quick and you didn't even have to think twice about where to look or where to go. So I highly suggest having a plan and setting up a strategy kind of like that. So let's go over what they're going to ask. So FRQ number 1 is experimental design. Here's some key terms she leaves on the left-hand side. So hypothesis, an example of one, controls and experimental groups. They also go over the variables and the design. Okay, it's super important that when they ask you to design an experiment, you not just have one control and one experimental. You're going to want one control and at least two experimental groups depending on what they're asking. So make sure you're going over the top for these. I personally think that 25 minutes to write these is a good amount of time. With if you're finishing with over 5 minutes left, add more in because you're probably not explaining yourself well. So you need a description of changing the independent variable between groups. So that would be like changing what you're testing between groups. So if you're looking at pH, maybe having the neutral pH is 7 for your control, and then doing an acidic less than 7, and then a basic of greater than 7. But obviously you'd have to describe what pH is, and that would depend if that's the experiment. And a specific description of measuring the dependent variables. So if you're looking at like the size of a population of, I don't know, water fleas, and you want to test how pH affects them, you don't want to just write like, I'll measure the population of water fleas. You're going to want to go in depth on how you're going to do that. Are you going to do random sampling and you're going to look under the microscope and you're going to count them, like physically count them? It can really go with anything, this question. So you need to make sure that how descriptive you are. If I was someone coming in to repeat your experiment, I could literally do it off your writing. Okay, so don't just be vague, be specific. All right, so here's the breakdown of points. Oh no. Okay, wait, that's the other one. Oh, here it is. Okay, the breakdown of points goes like this. So you basically have 4 points for your design. Use the infographic to answer the experimental design portion of FRQ1. This is easier portion. You should start with it and be sure to earn all your points here. From what I'm reading and what I'm gathering, you're not going to be able to jump ahead to question 2. You're going to have to wait the time out, and that's what our director had said as well. Before even beginning, this is a good little tip here. Pick out what the independent variable is and what the dependent is. Don't just assume and go into the question blind. Make sure you write that out somewhere. I personally would have so much just scrap paper to start jotting down my thoughts. I wouldn't just rely on typing. That's just my personal preference, though. After you do the experimental design, you're going to have to explain some concepts behind the experiment. So if the experiment was on, I don't know, like soil permeability and how groundwater leaches through, they might start asking you questions about what type of like soil would you want to have at the bottom of landfill, what percent clay, silt, and sand. And obviously you'd want more clay because it's less permeable. So they're going to start to take the environmental concepts and tie it into that experiment. This is where those unit guides come into place. So if you know what's in each unit, super quick, you can grab it. If I were you, if you have a whiteboard, I would be writing out Unit 1, the living world. Unit 2, biodiversity. I would be writing out each unit and what they are. And that way, when you see what it is, the topic, you can throw it into a unit and pick it out right away. I think it's all about strategy for this. The last thing is you have to justify your solution to the issue. And that's in-depth explanations. So why is it harmful, okay? And why or how the advantage avoids these harmful effects. So everything is about being really descriptive. I honestly think you guys couldn't have had it better for this test. I think the topic is the thing that's kind of a toss-up, but I do think you guys have been really good at setting up experiments. And I think as for tying it into the concepts, you've been good with your FRQs if you've been practicing, and I don't think you should have any issues with that. All right, let's go on to number 2. Okay. FRQ2 is going to be analyzing an environmental problem, so you're not designing an experiment for that. So let's see. Explain an environmental problem. Explain environmental problems in a step-by-step answer. Focus on why or how the problem occurs or exists. Where does it start? What environmental process or concept causes it? So usually 3 parts to earn explain points. So in order to, if it says to explain something, look at this example really closely. So it says explain how melting sea ice leads to a feedback loop that increases Arctic warming. You should have 3 points. 3 points in order to get the full credit for an explain. Okay, it doesn't just mean identify. So melting sea ice leads to more open water, which has a lower albedo, which is that reflecting effect, than ice, and absorbs more of the sun's energy, the warming water. The increased water temperature melts the ice further, and that causes positive feedback. So it's important to really tie up all your loose ends. So for that, you'll be presented with a short passage, a diagram, or even data which illustrate an environmental problem. You may be asked to describe a trend in the data that illustrates the problem. So always reference data points. So if you have just data in a table, or if they give you a graph or diagram, be specific to where you're looking at it. It's not going to hurt you to just be painfully specific. It's going to be a pain for the reader, but at the same time, you don't want to miss a point. So data, never speak generally about numbers going up or down. Don't just say they go up. Okay, say, the number of individuals is going to increase from this to this over the course of this to this. So be super specific. The diagram, it's going to, if they do give you one, you want to pay attention to the direction of the arrows and then the parts and what's labeled. So that graph you guys just had for your FRQ on the sulfur and the pH. So it was the pH on one side and then the sulfur emissions on the other from coal burning power plants. So it showed this like a negative like X, but the pH was going down. Okay, so it was getting more acidic. So it's important to really, really, really look into exactly what that diagram is. If it's a passage, read very carefully 2 times before answering anything. Be sure you're explaining the prompt and whether it's talking about ecological or economic. So make sure you're looking for those keywords. If it's economic, then you're wanting to have advantage towards the businessman. If it's environmental or ecological, advantage towards the environment. So make sure you're switching your point of view. And that's worth 2 to 4 points. This last part, it's going to be to propose and justify a solution to a problem. So again, just like the one before it, you are going to have to be really, really specific and justify how that would reduce the issue at hand. Also, we talked about this. It has to be realistic. So I know in class, I think someone had said something when we were talking about like preserving water. Someone's like, oh, just all hop in together and share the water. That's not realistic. Okay. So, more realistic would be putting a shower head on that releases less water, or maybe shortening the length of time in the showers. But you also need to make sure it's realistic. And then for government based solutions, you should never include bans or raising or lowering the prices for goods or services. So, you want to say they can make laws. You want to talk about increasing taxes on things, or giving tax breaks or rebates, or subsidizing programs. So do not talk about just banning. Okay. Talk about laws, talk about taxing, talk about rebates. Okay. So that's where those points are going to come in. Um, this person also made these unit guides, and that's kind of what I've been talking about. So if you go to the other document that I put on here, right here, this breaks down each unit into like very specific things that you should know. And I love this, and I'm so happy someone is neurotic about like organization and color schemes and things. I highly, highly suggest this weekend, if you can do anything, I'm not giving you any work. If you could do anything, I would go through old practice experimental design questions. I would go through old practice environmental solution questions, which are a lot of them. I would just go back on the AP website and look at the old FRQs, and they have the answer sheets, they have the student scoring sheets. So everything's available to you. If you don't know where to look, message me on Remind and I'll get you there. If you scroll down, it goes through each topic. It's actually insane. I'm like obsessed with this. So it doesn't separate it by units necessarily, but it does go through it by topic. So if you had a question on, I don't know, I'm trying to think, like eutrophication, which everyone should know eutrophication is the excess of nutrients that goes into a waterway, leading to an algae bloom, which in turn leads to a dead zone. But if you didn't know that, and they were talking about eutrophication, or they were talking about how things go into the water, well, if you go here, water, then you're like, oh, cultural eutrophication, what is that? Right here, the excess of supplies by humans leading to a toxic algae bloom from inorganic fertilizers. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay. They even put the different acts at the bottom that have to do with water: the Clean Water Act, the Safe Water Drinking Act. They talk about it. I'm like, I love these things. I'm like so excited about these. I hope you guys use them because they're awesome. So these are super, super helpful. And I don't think this is something to wait till you get on the exam and be like, oh, those sheets were there. No, print them out, have them accessible, know where everything is, be prepared, because if you're not prepared, you're timed and then you're going to be panicked. Okay. I I really do have like so much excitement that you guys are going to do awesome on this. So I think it's more about you guys getting in your head. Stay motivated, stay clear minded. Okay. It's timed, but I think the timing is fair. So just make sure you're focused and you're going through each thing as it goes. Let's see what else we got. I'm actually going to stop this video here, and then I'm going to go over those topics for soil, plate tectonics, in the next video. Okay, so I'll post them separately. But if you're only watching this one, good luck. I wish I could be there to wish you luck in person. I'm super excited that you guys have pushed through this far. And, I wish things would have gone differently this year, but we work with what we got, and you guys are all better people for it. So I will hopefully see you soon. I will hopefully get in touch with you soon, and I want to hear how it goes. So message me right after you finish. Okay. Bye, guys.